The Riddle of the Earth, Chapter 10, Drift and Change of Climate. The drift marks an epoch which left its traces over an extended area, and with one exception, nowhere was it more widely spread or so violent in its effects as in the British Isles. It coincided with a remarkable change in climate and considerable alterations in the physical conditions of at least a part of the Northern Hemisphere. Professor Hare describes it as the period of the flood. Quote, during its course, many modifications of climate occurred and exercised a great influence on the constitution of the flora and fauna. A peculiar character belonged to the epoch from the enormous masses of water produced by active condensation, originating mighty glaciers, and from the elevations and depressions still frequently modifying the limits of their part of the world. It has been well defined as a period of inundations. And this is from the book Primeval World of Switzerland. Ignatius Donnelly, who alone among investigators seems to have boldly stated that the drift was the residue of a comet, describes the phenomena of it in graphic language. Quote, animals were slaughtered outright and so suddenly that few escaped. Drift fell as a sudden catastrophe. Stones and boulders alike were scattered higgledy-piggledy, pell-mell through the day. The drift marks probably the most awful convulsion and catastrophe that has ever fallen upon the globe. The deposit of these continental masses of clay, sand and gravel was but one of the features of the appalling event, and this is from the book Ragnarok. The explanations offered by distinguished geologists to account for this are all contradictory and unsatisfactory. They agree generally in propounding the doctrine that the drift period was T-lie result. Check your grammar, people. I'm not sure what that's trying to say. Period was T-lie result in some ways of the action of ice. They ascribe it to the movements of ice fields, or to glaciers on a mighty scale, or to a vast ice sheet which spread south from the pole. Enormous masses of ice, according to this theory, spread over the northern hemisphere, carrying with them great quantities of rock, till, boulder clay, gravel, sand and other materia, torn from the original beds by the ice pressure and deposited where we now discover them. Geologists usually incline to the belief that there was more than one such ice age. Some argue that the till was deposited earlier than the boulder clay and contorted drift found mainly upon the east coast of England, but others contend that the till merges into the boulder clay and infer from this a definite continuity. To explain these terms, it may be said here that boulder clay consists of large and rounded stones of rocks of different sizes, their edges all blunted and found embedded in clay. The till is another form of boulder clay, distinguished by its very stiff, closely welded particles, the stones being usually smaller and more straighted or scratched or grooved than ordinary boulder clay. So stiff is this till that railway engineers and others in Scotland, where it is mainly found, have said that they would prefer to excavate through the solid rock than it. The unstratified drift is an accumulation of boulder clay, rock, gravel, sand and clay, not in beds or in regular layers, but spread in confusion with no apparent order or system. The till is one of the peculiarities of the drift. The following extract into it, Sir Archibald Geekie's work, will not be misplaced. The till is spread in broad but somewhat ragged sheets throughout the lowlands, continues across wide tracts, whilst in the highlands it is confined principally to the valleys. The lowest member of the drift is invariably tough, strong clay, till or hardpan. It is hard to say whether the till consists more of stones or clay. In describing the till, I remarked that the irregular manner in which the stones were scattered through that deposit imparted to it a confused and tumultuous appearance. The clay is distinctly unstratified. The boulders in the till are very numerous, not invariably rounded, yet not angular, not very large, but without exception deeply straighted or grooved. The boulder clay sometimes contains very large boulders, as at Bradford, Massachusetts, where one such stone is estimated to be over 2,000 tons in weight, and at Whittingham, Vermont, with a bulk of 30,000 cubic feet. I love how we just jump across the Atlantic like that with no warning. Sometimes the till and boulder clay pass into one another by insensible degrees. Tile clays in which these stones are embedded are varied, being blue, purple, brown or yellow, and are entirely foreign to the surrounding strata where they were deposited. It was previously mentioned in regard to meteors that Geeky traced some phenomenal results dating from the Tertiary age, and there are the strongest reasons for the belief that the basaltic flow which deluged an area of so many thousands of miles was also simultaneously accompanied by this phenomenon of the till and boulder clay. Is highly probable also that the same period, if not event, was largely responsible for our coalfields and for the presence of amber, and thus the drift period remains an epoch whose devastating effects are apparent at every turn, although its cause remains a profound mystery. It's very interesting reading that, because the crag and tail formations, which are supposedly volcanic, is where you find the likes of Stirling Castle, Edinburgh Castle, etc. and so forth. But pretty interesting theory so far. I'm quite enjoying this book, apart from the slight spelling and grammar errors, but the guy was a journalist. He wasn't an academic, so that's to be expected, I suppose.